Welcome to One Chapter, One Thought. I'm Pastor Chris from Lincroft Bible Church in New Jersey, and every weekday I read one chapter of the Bible and offer one brief devotional thought. Today's reading is from the book of Genesis, chapter 30. When Rachel saw that she wasn't having any children for Jacob, she became jealous of her sister. She pleaded with Jacob, "Give me children or I'll die." Then Jacob became furious with Rachel. "Am I God?" he asked. "He's the one who has kept you from having children." Then Rachel told him, "Take my maid Bilhah and sleep with her. She will bear children for me, and through her I can have a family too." So Rachel gave her servant Bilhah to Jacob as a wife, and he slept with her. Bilhah became pregnant and presented him with a son. Rachel named him Dan, for she said, "God has vindicated me. He has heard my request and given me a son." Then Bilhah became pregnant again and gave Jacob a second son. Rachel named him Naphtali, for she said, "I have struggled hard with my sister, and I'm winning." Meanwhile, Leah realized that she wasn't getting pregnant anymore, so she took her servant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Zilpah presented him with a son. Leah named him Gad, for she said, "How fortunate I am." Then Zilpah gave Jacob a second son, and Leah named him Asher, for she said, "What joy is mine! Now the other women will celebrate me." One day during the wheat harvest, Reuben found some mandrakes growing in a field and brought them to his mother Leah. Rachel begged Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." But Leah angrily replied, "Wasn't it enough that you stole my husband? Now you will steal my son's mandrakes too?" Rachel answered, "I will let Jacob sleep with you tonight if you give me some of the mandrakes." So that evening, as Jacob was coming home from the fields, Leah went out to meet him. "You must come and sleep with me tonight," she said. "I have paid for you with some mandrakes that my son found." So that night he slept with Leah, and God answered Leah's prayers. She became pregnant again and gave birth to a fifth son for Jacob. She named him Issachar, for she said, "God has rewarded me for giving my servant to my husband as a wife." Then Leah became pregnant again and gave birth to a sixth son for Jacob. She named him Zebulun, for she said, "God has given me a good reward. Now my husband will treat me with respect, for I have given him 6 sons. Later she gave birth to a daughter and named her Dinah. Then God remembered Rachel's plight and answered her prayers by enabling her to have children. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son. "God has removed my disgrace," she said, and she named him Joseph, for she said, "May the Lord add yet another son to my family." Soon after Rachel had given birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Please release me so I can go home to my own country. Let me take my wives and children, for I have earned them by serving you, and let me be on my way. You certainly know how hard I have worked for you." "Please listen to me," Laban replied. "I've become wealthy, for the Lord has blessed me because of you. Tell me how much I owe you. Whatever it is, I'll pay you." Jacob replied, "You know how hard I've worked for you, and how your flocks and herds have grown under my care. You had little indeed before I came, but your wealth has increased enormously. The Lord has blessed you through everything I've done. But now, what about me? When can I start providing for my own family?" "What wages do you want?" Laban asked again. Jacob replied, "Don't give me anything. Just do this one thing, and I'll continue to tend and watch over your flocks. Let me inspect your flocks today and remove all the sheep and goats that are speckled or spotted, along with all the black sheep. Give these to me as my wages. In the future, when you check on the animals you have given to me as my wages, you'll see that I have been honest. If you find in my flock any goats without speckles or spots, or any sheep that are not black, you will know that I have stolen them from you." "All right," Laban replied, "it will be as you say." But that very day Laban went out and removed the male goats that were streaked and spotted, all the female goats that were speckled and spotted or had white patches, and all the black sheep. He placed them in care of his own sons, who took them a 3 days' journey from where Jacob was. Meanwhile, Jacob stayed and cared for the rest of Laban's flocks. Then Jacob took some fresh branches from poplar, almond, and plane trees and peeled off strips of bark, making white streaks on them. He then placed these peeled branches in the watering troughs where the flocks came to drink, for that was where they mated. And when they mated in front of the white-streaked branches, they gave birth to young that were streaked, speckled, and spotted. Jacob separated those lambs from Laban's flock, and at mating time he turned the flock to face Laban's animals that were streaked or black. This is how he built his own flock instead of increasing Laban's. Whenever the stronger females were ready to mate, Jacob would place the peeled branches in the watering troughs in front of them. They would mate in front of the branches, but he didn't do this with the weaker ones, so the weaker lambs belonged to Laban and the stronger ones were Jacob's. As a result, Jacob became very wealthy, with large flocks of sheep and goats, female and male servants, and many camels and donkeys. One thought. If you think your family is dysfunctional, take solace in learning about Jacob's family dynamics in this chapter. First of all, both of his wives are jealous of each other, and both are trying to more or less one-up each other by having more children. Having children was a woman's pride and glory in the ancient Near East, and so it would have been incredibly shameful for Rachel to be infertile, and she would have felt much shame from this, much embarrassment from this. And so the women get so desperate to have kids. I mean, at first Leah is able to have a bunch of kids, and then she stops having kids. Rachel gets so desperate that she gives her maidservant to her husband to sleep with to have kids, and the maidservant starts having kids, and then Leah gives her maidservant to her husband, and she starts having kids as well. And then they start bartering more for Jacob's attention. And so Leah gets some mandrakes from her son, and mandrakes were considered an aphrodisiac in the ancient Near East. And Rachel is like, give me some of those. By the way, like, I'll let you sleep with your husband tonight, which again is just crazy that, they're restricting access to their own husband from each other. And then furthermore, Leah goes to Rachel and says, wasn't it enough that you stole my husband, which is completely untrue. Leah was actually the one who stole Jacob away from Rachel. So there's just this weird, twisted, messed up family dynamic. And we see also this weird dynamic between Jacob and Laban, where they're both trying to deceive each other, both trying to amass wealth. There's rivalry and jealousy and cunning and backstabbing. Laban says to Jacob, okay, you can have flocks and build up your flock. And Jacob said, okay, I'll take all the speckled ones, all kind of the messed up colored ones. You can have all the pure white sheep and goats. So then Laban goes and takes all the speckled lambs, and he says, takes them 3 days away. So Jacob sees nothing that could be his. And then Jacob peels off these bark branches and throws it in the water, and the animals for some reason start producing speckled lambs, and Jacob is trying to rig things in his favor. So it is not healthy in any way. But I wonder how things would have been if the family remembered God's sovereignty, because we see these glimpses of God's sovereignty throughout the passage. For example, we see God remembering Rachel and answering Leah's prayers. And clearly God is the one that opens and shuts the womb. He is the one in control. It seems also that God is working some kind of miracle through these peeled branches so that these sheep will reproduce a certain way. But would there have been rivalry and jealousy if the family was remembering that God was in control? Would each wife been trying to outdo one another? And I think on a side note here as well, we see that this passage really just shows that polygamy doesn't work. Tension, undermining, rivalry, that is what happens when these patriarchs were having multiple wives. It was not God's design originally. God's original design was that for Adam and Eve, to be one man married to one woman. And so going against God's design only brings pain and sorrow and family dysfunction.